So I'm just going to do a little introduction and then I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, who's going to give some basic rules of the road, and then we're going to get to our candidates. Um, so this is a forum for district leader candidates in the 44th Assembly District, hosted by the 44th Assembly District Committee of the Democratic Party. My name is Tony Malone. I'm the chair of the 44th ADC. And for those who don't know, district leaders, also known as state committee members, are leaders of the Brooklyn Democratic Party and members of the State Democratic Committee. These are unpaid positions, but they do have considerable power. They're up for election in the Democratic primary every even-numbered year, but these elections are often uncontested, so they often don't appear on the ballot. But this year, it looks like we will have one or possibly two contested races. And there are 44 district leaders in Brooklyn, and they elect the party chair, which is probably is definitely the most powerful person in the Brooklyn Democratic Party. The party chair has total control over what our local party does, what races it gets involved in, how it raises money, how it spends money, and how it manages staff and volunteers. And district leaders also play a large role in choosing judges for the Brooklyn seats on the New York Supreme Court. District leaders also have the power to change the rules of our local party anytime they want by majority vote at any of their meetings. The current party rules consolidate most of the power with the party chair, but these rules could be changed to give, for example, a greater role to county committee members. In Brooklyn, as we've mentioned, district leaders are also members of the state committee. So if you see these races on your ballot, they'll be listed as state committee members on the ballot, but that will also be electing them to the district leader positions because those positions go together in Brooklyn. And each assembly district has two district leader seats, one designated male and the other designated female. But a recent change to the party rules allows people who don't identify as male or female to run. And in that situation, the two seats would go to the top two candidates of different genders. So non-binary people can run for these seats because of the recent rule change. So now I'm going to turn it over to our vice chair, Courtney Adrian, who is going to speak a little bit about how this debate is going to work.
Hi, everybody. So Tony and I are going to moderate, and Amy Plattis, I'm not sure if it's Plattis Meyer or Plattis Meyer, is going to be the timekeeper. Each candidate is going to have 5 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll ask questions submitted by county committee members, and each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to answer each question. If a candidate criticizes another candidate directly, then they'll get 1 minute to respond. So we'll hear from candidates for the male designated seat first. We'll aim to wrap up by 8:15 for that portion. And if we have time after we finish the pre-submitted questions, we'll take 1 or 2 questions from attendees, and then we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for a closing statement. And we'll repeat this process with the female designated seats, and we'll aim to wrap up this whole thing by 9. So you're welcome to post in the chat, but please be aware of how much space you're taking up and be respectful of the candidates and the attendees. Please don't post any personal attacks. This forum is being recorded and will be shared everywhere afterwards. So don't say or post anything you wouldn't want to share with all of the voters in Brooklyn. I guess without any further ado.
Yes, I'm just going to jump in here, Courtney, because I just heard from Doug Schneider, one of our candidates for the male district leader seat, that he's having issues joining the Zoom. So I think rather we flipped a coin and Doug was going to go first, but I think we're going to let George give his opening statement first, since Doug has not been able to join the Zoom as yet.
Sure.
So I lost the coin toss and I go first. Is that...
Looks like that's how it works out.
So I have 5 minutes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
You can take it away, George Albro.
So I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the getting the invite. Let me just say, I think, I know some of you, but I don't know everyone, and maybe you don't know me. I could just give you a short resume, I am a lawyer and a union organizer by trade. I spent 20 years working for legal services and then legal aid. I represented tenants who were being evicted in East Brooklyn for 4 years. Then I went and I represented people in criminal court with the Legal Aid Society. After that, I was elected to Secretary Treasurer of my union, the UAW, which represented the lawyers. And there I was on staff for about 15 years or so, and I worked in the office with the president, who was also on staff. In 98, I was one of the key people that founded the Working Families Party, getting my union, the UAW, involved in that. And we were able to win that permanent ballot status doing that. In that capacity, we also did a number of important struggles, like we got the Rockefeller drug laws repealed by winning the Albany seat against the entrenched candidate. I organized a slate of candidates to run for judge against the county leader slate, and we did pretty well on that. In 2016, I was one of the statewide coordinators for Bernie Sanders as a volunteer, and we got a slate of over 100 delegates to run, and went to the convention, and I was there. I was on the county committee in the 52nd AD, and then before they moved me back to the 44th, and I would have been on the 44th as filling a vacancy, but Rodnice had other ideas, and she apparently vetoed the whole slate, and so I'm not currently on the county committee. Why am I running? Well, I'm going to be 75 March 1st. I am not running for a political career or as a stepping stone to higher office. Well, I'm running because I've been very involved in a group called NIPAN, which was the Bernie group that survived. And we've been very involved in struggle within the Democratic Party, both on the Kings County level and on the state level. Because basically, the leader of the Democratic Party on the state level handed the House of Representatives to the Republican Party. And that to me was beyond the pale, and we had to fight that. I'm running against Doug, who I supported when he ran 6 years ago, and campaigned for him. I somehow think, though, that Doug has not been involved in all the aspects of what it means to be district leader. He does not go to the state committee meetings, as far as I know. I go. He says he claims he gives his proxy to someone, which is okay, I guess, if you do it once or twice. But if you're campaigning for democracy and an end to the proxy system, you shouldn't be giving your proxy to someone. You should be attending the meetings. We need to get rid of Jay Jacobs. I know Doug signed the letter, but that's not doing the work that needs to get rid of them. You have to organize throughout the state people that are going to have a different candidate than Jay Jacobs, and that are going to take democratize the party. And I can't blame Doug for not switching the county leader. He votes the right way, but he doesn't organize within the county. You have to organize, even people who maybe are not your friends, if you're going to win and defeat someone like Rodnice. Doug ran for city council. I applaud him for that. I think he has other issues that take priority than being district leader. So I'm just running to win a reform slate. Does that mean no more time or one more?
That means your time is up.
Okay, and to get rid of Jay Jacobs and have a progressive as a state party leader.
Thanks very much, George. And now Doug Schneider has joined us, so I'm going to turn it over to the incumbent in this race. Doug Schneider, candidate for district leader. You have 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you everybody for being here. Sorry, it was a few minutes late. It was one of those situations where Zoom kept saying you have to update, and you update, and it says you need to update, and so I got stuck in this infernal loop. But I'm here. You're all here. I don't know.
Oh, we lost you, Doug. I think your audio just cut out. Nothing so far. Still nothing.
Still nothing.
Oh, there it is. You're back.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So I don't know where I got cut off. Anybody who doesn't know me, Doug Schneider. I've been the district leader since 2018. I ran initially on a platform and a mission of transparency, organizing, and reform. I think in every way, shape, and form, I have continued on that mission. I have never been distracted from that mission, and I'm proud of the work that we've done together, and I'm proud of the successes that we've had. I am proud to have played a role in helping get this ADC off the ground, and then supporting it while giving it the space to operate independently. And that's really a sign of what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to create transparency, and we've done it in some respects. There's more transparency today around judicial selection than there was when we started, or when I started. There's more transparency about the organization's finances that there are today than there were before. We've had success in electing more reform district leaders. When I started, I was one of 3. And today we are really 1 or 2 votes short, maybe 3 to 4 votes short of being able to finally take over the party. As soon as I was elected, I introduced a number of reforms. I worked with many of you on these reforms over the years, specifically focused on proxy reform, on the organization and the way that meetings run. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done. We briefly had success until we had a rogue parliamentarian reverse everything that we've done. But this is a mission that we've started together, and I would like to see out together. One of the things that I'm most proud about is my participation in the committee that led to ultimately the reversal of a policy that kept out people who identified as transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming were by rule from participation in the party. And I was very proud of the role I played in eliminating that and opening up participation in the party to people regardless of their gender identity, their gender expression. George said a lot of things about my record. I think I have a strong record of organizing. I think there's very few people on the county committee, nonetheless, as district leaders, who have a stronger record on organizing people to oppose the leadership of first Frank Seddio and today Rodneyce Bichotte. I think it's evident in the work that I do with district leaders who agree with us, right? Like Julio or Jackie, and district leaders who don't always agree with us, like a Penny Ringel or Kelman Yeager, or even a Henry Butler or Sarana Purcell. My door is always open, my phone is always on, and I'm constantly working to create coalitions and to build better relationships and build a movement. And actually, if you look at what happened in Justin Brannan's election where we had a county chair attacking our own candidate. Okay. And, myself and some others, we organized a very successful public statement about what had happened and our outrage at what had happened. And there were folks, other district leaders who agreed with us, but weren't willing to sign the letter. But if you look the next day and you look at who showed up in Bay Ridge fighting for Justin, you'll see not just Doug Schneider, not just Julio Pena and Jackie Painter, but you'll see, Joe Bova, Henry Butler, Sarana Purcell, those are the relationships that we have to build in order to be more effective and have a better chance of winning both the small fights and the fights in the large term. Does that mean I'm done, Amy? Can
Yeah.
I get even?
I gave you some extra time.
You gave me some extra. All right. Well, I just going to say I hope I can count on everybody's support and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Doug. And thanks, Amy, for helping out with the timekeeping. So we're going to get to questions submitted by county committee members, some folks in this meeting. I'm not going to announce who submitted which question, but if you want to post in the chat that this is my question, by all means, feel free to do so. First question is, do you agree that a Democratic district leader should only belong to and identify with the Democratic Party? And just for a little context for those who may not know the inner workings of Brooklyn politics, some Brooklyn district leaders hold other offices, and some have run for those other offices on other party lines. For example, District Leader Kalman Yeager is also a city council member and runs for council on the Democratic, Republican, and Conservative party lines. And District Leader Anthony Jones ran for assembly in 2022 in the general election on the rent is too damn high party line, and he lost that race to the Democratic incumbent Latrice Walker. So we're going to go to George Albro first on the question of, do you agree that a Democratic district leader should only belong to and identify with the Democratic Party?
Well, I don't know what other party they would be, right? The Republican or Conservative Party, which Jay Jacobs has, have good relations with and have run conservatives and even supported GOP candidates in the past on Long Island. It's another story. But yes, I mean, if you're a district leader in the Democratic Party, you should be an enrolled Democrat and you should relate to the Democratic Party. Now, that doesn't mean we can't, as a party, develop alliances with, people like who are in the WFP. The WFP is a big supporter of the Democratic Party, as you know, and works a lot. I mean, I can't see a scenario where we would work with the Republicans or the conservatives for that matter. It just is not going to work. But we should try and recruit, and we should try and relate to people who may at times vote Republican, because that's our job, to organize people into our party and to support the ideas and principles that we as Democrats, put forward. So, I'm not for parties that are going to be divisive and run spoiler candidates. That's for sure. And I don't think the WFP does that, which is the reason why we relate to that party.
Thanks, George. And I got a request from someone on the call just for a follow-up to confirm that you're making a distinction between a district leader being affiliated with the Working Families Party, as I believe you are, versus being affiliated with the Republican or Conservative Party.
Yeah, I was an enrolled voter in the WFP from 98 to around 2015, which means I disenfranchised myself. But I did it for the cause of having this progressive party, which ended up moving the Democratic Party more to their views and progressive. In order to be a delegate for Bernie at the convention, I switched my party to Democrat.
Thank you, George. And now the same question to Doug Schneider.
Let me start by saying I am a lifelong Democrat. I've been a Democrat since the age of 18 when I registered to vote. I didn't need to change my registration to run for district leader. I didn't need to change my registration to vote in the Democratic primary because I believe in the values and I believe in the policies of the Democratic Party. We have in New York a fusion voting system. So within that system, there's nothing inherently wrong with being, you have to be an enrolled Democrat, obviously, and there's nothing wrong with having affiliations with other parties so long as those parties are not acting against our party's interests, so long as that party isn't attacking our candidates, so long as that party is espousing ideas consistent with our ideas and our party platform. I will say that I was for a long time a lifetime sustaining member of the Working Families Party. I've never been a member of the DSA. And I would never be a member of the DSA, but I was a member of the Working Families Party. And then there was a realignment within the Working Families Party where all the labor unions, and I was a labor Democrat. I was a plaintiff side labor and employment lawyer, and all the labor unions pulled out of the WFP and were replaced by constituent groups, the largest of which is the DSA. And so I stopped my affiliation with the WFP because I found their views inconsistent with my views and with my job as a Democratic district leader. So I think there's nothing inherently wrong with it. I don't currently do it. I think that Lori Nipel, who we should all thank for her service, is right that in many ways it dilutes because a lot of our power is based upon how many people vote on the Democratic line for governor in the gubernatorial years. And therefore, when people vote on a different line, it hurts especially in our district where a lot of people vote on the WFP line, that does take away our power within the county committee. That's kind of how I see the fusion voting issue.
And just a quick follow-up, Amy posted in the chat, what about the other question, whether is it okay for a district leader to also, run on, say, a conservative or a Republican or other, not sort of far distant party for another office?
Amy, is that your question, or is your question, what do we think about somebody being both a city council member and a district leader?
I was asking what you were saying, Doug, because I heard that in the original question as well.
I will say, I don't think that somebody should be holding both the legislative position, other than the county chair, which I can understand why you would want to do both. I personally don't think that that's a good way to operate. I don't think that we're going to see a change in that, anytime soon. And I can't say among all of our priorities, that's the highest priority. But when we got to our list of things that we wanted to change, that is one that I would support changing.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to turn it over to Courtney for the next question.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so at the last county committee meeting in 2022, many members had questions about the vote tallies projected on the screen. Proposals were supported by most of the people in the room, but consistently lost two proposals supported by the party chair. Despite repeated requests, the party leaders never revealed any details afterwards of how these votes were tallied and how many were proxy votes. How should the party share information on voting on financial decisions with its members? I don't know if Doug or George are going to go first. Do we want to keep our order, or
let's alternate? So since George went first in the last one, let's go to Doug on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, Courtney, it's interesting because at that meeting we spent a lot of money on technology to have a system of electronic voting. It is not difficult to release those tallies, right? That back end data is there. I think that the issue that we are talking about is the issue ultimately of, number one, transparency. But I think the larger issue, right, is proxy reform. The larger issue is the idea of people who are not in the room deciding these votes. And if everybody were in the room, right, the hidden vote wouldn't be an issue. And that is why I think that, and have thought since 2018, that one of our top priorities has to be to do proxy reform. Now, there is a balance there in finding exactly the right number, because there is a legitimate concern that if we don't have a quorum, we can't have a meeting. And if we don't have a meeting, the party doesn't get constituted and we can't run candidates. So the finesse of proxy reform is figuring out where what is the lowest number we can support without jeopardizing our ability to have a quorum. I was proud to have worked with many of you, with other reform district leaders, with the New Kings Democrats on the last slate. And my recollection is that we had settled on 15. I think 15 is a good number. I think we could probably go up to 25 if it meant getting it done. But I think that the key of issue is that if we don't reform proxies, if we don't reform that process, then we always have to worry about the votes that we can't see.
Thanks, Doug. I'll ask the same question to George. George, would you like me to repeat it?
Sure.
The last county committee meeting, many members had questions about the vote tallies. Despite repeated requests, the party leaders never revealed any details afterwards of how these votes were tallied or how many were proxy votes. How should the party share information on voting and financial decisions with its members?
I mean, the party has to share information on everything. They don't even tell us. They have a website where they list your district and the name, nothing else about the district leaders throughout the state. The only person who could contact them is Jay Jacobs, and he gives that list to the governor when she wants to organize her campaign. You can't even get the rules. You can't make a copy of the rules. They have a software where you could only copy one page at a time. I mean, it's ridiculous. Everything's a secret. And in terms of proxy, the proxy should be a last resort. Yeah, I understand the need to have a quorum. But when you give a proxy to someone, you're saying, hey, vote however you want. I am not going to attend this meeting. You could tell the person, yes, I want you to vote for this person for governor with my proxy. But there are amendments coming up at these meetings. There are resolutions that are amended and changed. And so you're just basic. And if you're not there, that is a disservice to democracy. Proxy should be the last resort. I was at the county committee meeting that we had in Kingsborough, where the New Kings Dems, and Brandon was part of that, organized 500 people to be in that theater. And if you remember, Brandon, we waited 4 hours before that meeting started until Frank Seddio had enough proxies to outvote all 500 of us. That is a crime against democracy, a crime. That should never happen. And it should certainly never happen on the state committee level. I know Doug says that he gives his proxies to other people at the state committee meeting. He has to attend those meetings, especially someone who claims to be an organizer, whether in Albany or whatever. You have to attend those meetings. I attend those meetings, and I'm not even on the state committee.
Can I respond?
Yes, you can take 1 minute to respond.
All right, thank you. So first of all, as Lori points out, you can absolutely give instructions on a proxy. It happens quite a bit. And at the state level, when I've given my proxy to Julio Pena, I'm very confident in Julio's knowledge of how I want to vote. When amendments have come up, Julio will text me if he has my proxy. The notion that I haven't attended meetings is false. This is George making stuff up because if he's not at the meeting, he says I'm not there. Okay, but I've been to meetings in Albany. I've been to meetings in New York City. I've been into meetings in Long Island. Okay, you can't make every meeting. They come up during the workday. They're midweek. Sometimes there's travel. Sometimes there's kids. And when I haven't been able to make a meeting, I give my proxy to somebody responsible. That's the way the system is supposed to work. And so to sit here and say that I'm not attending meetings is just false. He's grasping for straws, okay, because it's all he has. Okay, if
I
you
don't
want to check
get
my
into the
record, you can
specifics,
check
but
my
I can
record.
name the
Hey,
meeting.
I don't
Check my record.
Okay.
I don't
I-
think we're gonna do crosstalk.
Sorry.
Yes, thanks. Let's move on to the next question. The next question, I think we can keep this one quick, just a yes or no, because we pretty much covered it in the last question. But the next question we had was, at county committee meetings, the votes of all the members attending in person are often overruled by hundreds of proxy votes held by a few allies of the party chair. Would you support limiting the number of proxy votes one person can hold? Yes or no? And we'll go to George first.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Doug?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we just covered.
Great. We've been saying that, so just wanted to get it on the record. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Courtney for the next question.
Thanks. Somebody's has a neighbor or someone in their house practicing the trombone, and it sounds
It's
lovely.
the French. It's the French horn. That's my son in the next
Oh.
room.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Do you believe that poll workers petitioning for district leader is a conflict of interest? Oh, sorry. Do having poll workers petitioning for district leaders is a conflict of interest? What relationship do you think district leaders should have to the Board of Elections hiring process? For context, traditionally, many district leaders have played a role in recruiting poll workers for the Board of Elections to hire in their district. Sometimes these poll workers are also county committee members, and sometimes they collect petition signatures to help district leader candidates get on the ballot. So I guess we'll start with Doug.
So, I can see why, from a technical standpoint, that is a possibility that you could consider that a conflict of interest. I think that the real problem is that, poll workers should not be excluded from being county committee members, right? We don't want people to say, I'm not going to participate within the party because I want to be a poll worker. I think that there's a better way to address that, right? Which is to have a better system of finding poll workers. I will say that anybody who wants to be a poll worker, who comes through me, will be a poll worker. And it's funny because I once called the Board of Elections for somebody who wanted to be a poll worker, but had been assigned all the way out in Coney Island. And so when I called the Board of Elections, they said to me, to shortcut the story, they said, well, our system doesn't list her as one of your people. I said, one of my people? I was like, I don't have people. This person wants to be a poll worker. They live in Park Slope. I want them to be in Park Slope. Like, this is basic democracy. They were like, oh, well, we'll put them in the system now as one of your poll workers. I said, what does that mean? I said, they're not mine. They're the Board of Elections. So I think that it's important that that we have a system, okay, that does not discourage people from being poll workers because they're members of the county committee and vice versa. I think that we need to reform the Board of Elections. I think that this is a fight that I've had directly with the Board of Elections. I think we need it to be based upon professionalism, not cronyism. I think that we need to make sure that jobs are competitively selected like any other job interview. I think there's a lot of talented people who work for the Board of Elections that got there from hard work because they were the best person for the job. And that is what we should be seeking across the board.
Thanks. George, would you like to answer? And would you like me to repeat?
I mean, I could live with that for the poll workers, but you know, the system is so riddled with conflicts that are much on a higher level, from anywhere from the I learned that the Board of Election workers can go out and petition, and then they rule on the signatures. You know, I mean, I don't understand whether they say, no, those signatures are good, I got them. I mean, it's like there is so many conflicts. The state committee, Jay Jacobs, chair, endorsing the governor before the state committee even met to discuss and vote on the nominations. And I mean, the system is so riddled with corruption and conflicts. You almost have to start from the beginning. But in terms of the poll workers being district leaders, you know, I mean, I think that could pass muster. I don't think, though, someone who runs for elective office and has an elective position should be a district leader. I mean, I think that is problematic and a big conflict.
Thank you, George. So for our next question, it's about the judicial selection process. The current judicial selection process is often opaque and does not give the public many ways to provide input. If you had the power to change Brooklyn's judicial selection process, what is one change that you would make? And we're going to go to George first.
Well, I don't believe in voting for judges. We had a system where the Court of Appeals once had a run. And then there are ethical issues about they're not allowed to campaign and take positions on certain issues. So, you know, when you interview a judge for endorsement, I don't know what question you ask them. What's your favorite color? I mean, it's kind of like, on the other hand, if there's appointed positions, that could be, unless it's carefully constructed, that could be a way to corruption and, you know, bribery for positions. I mean, what did it cost Republicans on Long Island to get a judgeship? You had to give $50,000 to the Republican Party for years and years, right? So, you know, it's a tricky question, but I think we have a better system where the Court of Appeals is not voted on, right? The most important court that we have in the state. And perhaps that should be, you know, more of the model. I mean, we don't have, and the elections we have are what? The county chair and the executive committee that they control go in a room and decide who's the judge. And that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that way.
Thanks, George. So same question for Doug. If you had the power to change Brooklyn's judicial selection process, what's one change that you would make?
You know, I'll start by saying, you know, one of the things that I think we've been successful at is trying to create more transparency around the judicial selection process. And I've worked with the other Reform District leaders, Julio Pena, again, before they left, with Christina Napolitarski, with a lot of others, to create more transparency, to create forums, to create questionnaires that go out to candidates that are public. We have insisted that they come and speak to our clubs, speak to our constituent groups. My position on judicial elections is set in stone. I've written, if you want to go and see my views, you can go read my op-ed from a couple of years ago in the Gotham Gazette. Judicial elections are broken, but they're not a joke. I am an opponent of judicial elections. Yes, the appointment system is not without its problems, but between the two, there are too many problems with the judicial election system, especially in New York, right? Where, we have, you can go into criminal court and be sitting next to one judge who was appointed by the mayor, another judge who was elected to civil court running in a municipal seat or municipal district, and another judge who was elected to civil court running borough-wide. And so the system makes no sense. It's confusing. And if I could change one thing about the judicial selection process, it would be to eliminate the election of judges.
Thanks, Doug. I'll turn it back over to Courtney for the next question.
Thanks, Tony. So this is a two-part question. Since district leaders are also members of the state Democratic Committee, do you support replacing Jay Jacobs as chair of the New York Dems? What do you think the state committee should be doing differently? Doug can go first.
Yes, I mean, I'm very much on record, both on social media and on record within the state committee in my opposition to Jay Jacobs. I think that, you put everything aside. This is true of Brooklyn and it is true of the state. We judge people based upon results, okay? And Jay Jacobs has not produced. He's not produced in his own backyard. He's not produced across the state. What is the one thing I would do differently? The thing that Jay Jacobs does that hurts the party the most is he fights Democrats more than he fights Republicans. We need a party that welcomes this, all views from all sides of the spectrum. Jay Jacobs insists on punching left. He has to stop punching left and invite us into the decision making and the decision making room. And he needs to embrace candidates who have views that don't match his conservative views. Okay, we are a big tent party, and we should expect the chair of the New York State Democratic Party to embrace the big tent philosophy. So yes, Jay Jacobs should go, and whoever replaces him should be soliciting the thoughts of everybody across the party and stop punching left.
Thanks. I asked the same of George.
And not only do I think he should go, I think one of the key areas of work of a district leader is to organize to get him out. It's not enough just to sign a letter. It's not enough just to say, I think he should be out. In order to get him out, first of all, he's a crony of Cuomo. Just one of the things he did was to lose his own congressional seat in his own district. In the district, the Republicans turned out 60%. The Democrats in his very district, the chair of the party, turned out 40%. And so we had the guy, what was his name, who just got kicked out of Congress for lying. No one did a background check of the guy or anything. And there were several seats. If we had kept the 4 seats that were Democratic, and we had one open seat, Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker. So we have to get him out. My organization, NIPAN, when they canceled the presidential primary, which meant that Radnise would pick all the delegates from Brooklyn to go to the primary, we sued, and I was one of the plaintiffs, and we won in the district court and we won in the Second Circuit, and they ordered that election take place. And that's what you have to do to someone like that. Jay Jacobs is the personification of everything that's the worst part of the Democratic Party of New York State. So we have to organize, and there are a lot of good people on the state committee in other areas outside of New York too, who are good people, who have good democratic instincts. We have to reach those people before the election of the new chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. I think that since we're doing pretty well on time, We do have a question in the chat that Raul submitted about community boards, and it's an interesting question. So I think I'll throw that to the candidates. He mentioned CB8, which is Prospect Heights. There's also CB6, which covers Park Slope and Gowanus, and CB7, I believe, which covers Windsor Terrace. So Raul's asking if you would promise to go to at least 2 community board meetings a year. And he's also asking about supporting the Prospect Heights members of our delegation. So whose turn is it? It is George's turn to go first.
Sure. I mean, the community boards, the people that sit on them are really the example of what the Democratic Party once was, which was a mass party that had roots in the community and that dealt with problems in each community. I would gladly go to at least 2 meetings a year, and I would work very closely with the community boards because you know, they're so important to our democracy and the way it goes. And they're shut out a lot of the party and the decision making, and we need to empower them.
Thanks, George. Same question to you, Doug.
Yeah, and I, as district leader, I have made it a point to try to go to the community board meetings across the district. Been to CB6, CB7, CB12, and CB14, and I think Raul, I think you point out very much an oversight on my part in not going to the community board meetings in Prospect Heights. In terms of what I've done to try to reach out, I think the hardest issue that I have confronted is that when it comes to poll workers, is that you have this chunk of people who have been poll workers, who were poll workers in another district, who now need to be integrated into the 44th. Well, the 44th has a really active and committed poll worker numbers. And so it's been a little bit harder to find people, for example, early voting slots, which is a really contentious issue. And so we've really I've reached out, I've spoken with the poll workers, I've worked with Shaquana. I set up, Shaquana had a meeting, Shaquana Boykin, who represented many of them, had a meeting where we introduced ourselves, where we started that transition. And so that is something that, look forward to keep working to keep better integrating people into their new assembly district.
Thanks, Doug. So I think we're just about at the part where we should do closing statements so we can get to the other district leader candidates. But a couple questions that we didn't get a chance to that maybe you can work in if there's room in your closing statements. Someone asked, how long have you lived in the community and what have you contributed throughout the years you've lived here? So maybe you could touch on that. And we also had a question basically about the dynamics of reforming the state party and the local party, and how do we build in the long term for the party at all its levels to be member driven. So those are just a couple of things to think about as we go into our closing statements. And we're going to go to, let's see, George had the first opening statement, so we'll go to Doug first for the closing statements. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you everybody for asking your questions, for spending a couple hours of your Tuesday night here. Thank you, George, for the I think good debate. I have lived in this community since 2006. I have been district leader since 2018. I'm a lay leader at Congregational Congregation Beth Elohim. I was on Councilmember Brad Lander's participatory budgeting. I was a trustee of the Park Slope Civic Council. I do those things because I love this community. And I ran for district leader because I love and believe in the Democratic Party. And as I said at the beginning, when I took over this job, when I pushed out a 40+ year incumbent on a platform of transparency, organizing, and reform, it was to make the changes that we have slowly started to make. And as I said, I feel like we are on the precipice of change, on the precipice of real change. We were, in my estimation, we were one vote short in the last leader election. And we have some really competitive district leader races coming up that if we can win 2 or 3 votes, 2 or 3 district leader seats, we can actually win the fight that many of us and many of you who have been fighting longer than me have been hoping for. I want to see it through. I want to see it through with all of you. It has been a pleasure to work with you and fight with you to create the Democratic Party that Brooklyn wants and deserves. So thank you, everybody. And I hope that I have earned your support tonight and earned your support over the last 6 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Now I'll turn it over to George for your 2-minute closing statement.
So I'll tell you what I'm not running for this job for, and that is for another office. I will not run for the council. I will not run for elective office. I am intending to focus like a laser on getting Radice out of power and getting a reform leader of the county in there, and getting Jay Jacobs out of power and getting a real progressive running the state party. It's just too important. And if I can't do that, then I will resign, because that's why I'm running, to do that. And it takes an organizer to do it who is not just focused on the 2 meetings a year the state committee is required to have under law, but every day is calling people, explaining our issues, trying to get them on our side. I think we can do that. But we have to have a broad party to do it. Like, we can't just hang out with people who agree with us. That's not a winning strategy. It's not how you organize a union, and it's not how you should organize the party. What have I've lived in Brooklyn my whole life. I went to Brooklyn College. I went to Brooklyn Law School. I'm in this apartment. It's going to be 40 years in March. And I think I'll have a little celebration. What do? I shoveled the snow this morning. That's what I did. That was my contribution to the city today. But seriously, working with the community, I'm good friends with Brad, worked with him closely on a lot of the issues that he has done. I support Bobby Carroll and a lot of the legislation that he is fighting for, like pedestrian pricing. And that's who I am.
Thanks very much, George. So thanks to George and Doug for joining us for that first segment of the forum. And now we're going to move on to hear from candidates for the female designated district leader seat. Now, a lot of people have been asking me to confirm, who's running for this seat, who's confirmed. And I don't want to speak for anybody. I want to have, respect for everybody involved, and certainly for both the incumbent and challenger. So I'm going to first give the floor to the incumbent district leader, Lori Citron-Nipel, to speak a little bit about what is on her mind. So
I'm sorry I have to leave, but good luck, Diana.
That's okay, George. Thanks.
Okay,
so,
bye.
I'll turn it over to Lori Nipel. Thanks for joining us tonight.
George has to leave, but he's saying that everybody needs to be at every meeting? What kind of representation is that? Let's start from the beginning. I've been district leader for 32 years. I've seen many, many, many changes in 32 years. I've been a part of the community. I know every single poll worker. I've appointed them. I've worked with them. I am the social worker. I am everything to them. I know my community. I know my community well. What I have against, and I consider myself progressive, but I think sometimes progressive ends up being regressive. the whole defund the police movement. Yes, we want more social workers. We want less police action. But you are shooting yourself in the head by having everybody in Southern Brooklyn become Republicans. Think it through. Think it through. There's only 27 people now in this meeting. The district is way more than 27 people. You have not reached out. They are not interested in joining this, and you're very, very limited and narrow in your views. Yes, I want to see more transparency. I made the original motion to have funds disclosed. I have also started the Women's Committee that changed the way judges are questions, and the whole, everybody followed me. I was the first one that did it. We made it more transparent. If you have no election of judges, as the king did back in the day of jolly old England, it was his friends and cronies, and the same thing with the governor. You will have no diversity. Read your history. So after 32 years, and excuse me for not keeping my picture up, I had a medical procedure today, and I'm definitely in pain, so I brought myself here. But after 32 years, I just want to say you're reinventing the wheel. We've had a lot of what you're saying in different ways. Now we really have to progress by representing all the people and representing them in a way that everybody can agree on. Everybody's not going to agree on everything, but you're a very small minority. A small minority. And if you want to get your points out, you've got to be careful that you're not killing the own Democratic Party that you want to make better. And I think that's a point that has to be spoken about over and over again. Other than that, I am not running for re-election. I am not retiring. I will be district leader through till whoever gets elected in June, but I will remain district leader till September. And I really think that I know the system well. I've been to many state committee meetings over the years. I've been to many county committee meetings over the years. I was the former chair of the 44th AD County Committee. We had no proxies. So please, all I could say is progressive. Keep an open mind and listen to sides. Because if you don't keep an open mind, you're not progressive.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you for your many years of service in this role. So considering that Lori is not running for re-election, I think what we'll do is that means that this race won't be on the ballot, but it's still important for us to learn about what the candidate for this role, the presumptive nominee, Diana Gonzalez, would do in this role. So I think we'll proceed and ask the questions to Diana. And if anyone has, and Marvin's asking in the chat, can we all take a minute to thank Lori? Sure, if you want to post something in the chat, let's do that. We could certainly share our thanks and our recollections of Lori's service in the chat. So thank you for that suggestion, Marvin. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Diana Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us. If you could give us a 5-minute or less opening statement.
Sure. Hello, Tony. And before I start, Marvin makes a very good point. I would like to say that I am absolutely in awe of Lori's service over the years. 32 years is most of my lifetime. Not trying to give too much away there. And I know she's really supported me personally, recommended clients to me, things of that nature. And she's always been a source of someone I could learn from. Even when I was the executive director of the county party back in 2011, she was someone I could talk to and work with. So even though obviously I was working for Vito Lopez, and that was very different circumstances. So thank you, Lori. You've been a tremendous asset to the Democratic Party in Brooklyn. My name is Diana Gonzalez. I'm running for Democratic State Committee and District Leader of the 44th Assembly District. I am the immediate past president of the Central Brooklyn Independent Democrats. I am the corresponding secretary of this group, the 44th Assembly District Democratic Committee. I am the chair of Community Board 7's Land Use and Landmarks Committee, and I am formerly the executive director of the Brooklyn Democratic Party. And I think in order to kind of understand where I'm from, I think it's important to tell a story of my childhood and something that really shaped me. So I want to go back 25 years ago to when I was in high school and my sister Carol was in elementary school. Carol was born with severe physical and intellectual disabilities and needed a variety of therapies, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy as a part of her education. However, every year the school district would refuse to give her at least one of those, forcing my parents to choose between teaching her how to walk, how to talk, or how to use her hands. I, on the other hand, didn't have to choose. I could have AP classes and sports and music, and that didn't seem right to me. So this was how I learned about power and the people who wield it. The leadership of my school district decided that Carol didn't deserve investment, or in essence, that she didn't matter. I didn't agree with that, and I've been fighting for fairness and opportunity ever since. Now I'm running for district leader, aka Democratic State Committee, which is what it's going to be on the ballot if I am on the ballot. This isn't a government office, it's an unpaid volunteer party position. And so I think it's important to talk about what we have the opportunity to do here in our Democratic Party. First, we have the opportunity to improve the caliber of the judges we elect. Second, we have the opportunity to professionalize the Board of Elections. And thirdly, and not least importantly, but possibly most importantly, we have the opportunity to build a robust campaign apparatus that supports Brooklyn's swing districts in the southern part of Brooklyn and sends buses for Biden to Pennsylvania every weekend. In 2008, I worked on a campaign in Rochester, New York. The campaign was provided office space by the Monroe County Democratic Committee, which also had an in-house PR person full-time and an in-house graphic designer and professional grade printer for printing campaign literature. The amount of support that candidate got from the party was incredible. Now, Monroe County has 755,000 residents. Brooklyn has 2.6 million. So just imagine how much more we could do. To make that vision a reality, we need to elect a new chairperson, which means electing a majority of pro-reform district leaders. We are so close to that goal already, we need only a couple seats. So I'm inviting you to join this campaign to bring much needed change to the Brooklyn Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. So we're just going to go through the questions. I'll try to, we'll try to do them the short versions because you've heard them already. First question is, do you agree that a Democratic district leader should only belong to and identify with the Democratic Party?
Yes and no. I see the argument there, but I also think it's important to point out that we are a big tent party, and we do have members like Kalman Yeager, who is in a very conservative area, and might honestly have an easier time if he wasn't running as a Democrat at all, but just was running on Republican lines. And so the fact that we count him in our camp is a big win for us. So I do want to be conscious of the fact that this is a big tent party and that not everyone's going to maybe pass any kind of purity test.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. At the last county committee meeting in 2022, this is the same question as before. We're asking all the same questions again.
Okay.
Many members had questions about the vote tallies projected on the screen, where proposals supported by most of the people in the room consistently lost to proposals supported by the party chair. Despite repeated requests, the party leaders never revealed any details afterward of how these votes were tallied and how many were proxy votes. How should the party share information on voting and financial decisions with its members?
Well, those are two different things. The financial decisions is actually a big one. If you go back and look at all of the county's financial reports, you'll find that there's a year missing. So really, we've done a very poor job of having clear financial information available. So that needs to be done better. In terms of the voting, what Doug said earlier is right. It's an electronic system. You can access the totals very easily. You should be able to access how many were proxies and how many were in person very easily. I think there's a broader question, though, of the proxies in general, because really the only way to be sure about the number of proxies is to actually go through them, which is possibly very daunting. And so I think that's something that needs to be built into the system of making it possible to keep track of those tallies and share that information publicly in order to, because what we need to do right now is we need to build trust in the party. And the way that you build trust is through transparency.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And the next question is just the yes or no one, whether you support limiting the number of proxy votes one person can hold in a county committee member meeting.
Absolutely.
Great. And since this is sort of related, I want to throw in a question that someone messaged me that if we are successful, those of us who are trying to elect more reform-minded district leaders, then how do we prevent the new leadership from basically leading in the same way, from consolidating power? How, in the long term, how do you think we build a party that's actually member-driven and not sort of top-down?
Right. So really, you can't do anything if you don't have the chair position. And it's going to be up to the person who accepts that chair position to effectively weaken themselves, right? Because power is zero sum. So whenever somebody has more, somebody else has less. And so we need to know that we can really trust that person to, you know, to give up power to the greater organization. And I think, yeah, it just comes down to do they earn that trust? And that's really all there is to it.
Thank you. So I'll turn it back over to Courtney for question number 4.
All right. Do you believe that having poll workers petitioning for district leaders is a conflict of interest? Or what relationship do you think district leaders should have to the Board of Elections hiring process?
Yeah, so I do think there is this conception that, you know, people get their poll working jobs by petitioning, and that's a problematic conception. I agree with Doug when he said earlier that no one should be prevented from participating in the party just because they're also a poll worker, or vice versa. So I think, you know, to me, anyone who wants to be a poll worker gets to be a poll worker. We don't have enough of them. And it's not that we're picking and choosing between people, it's that we're trying to recruit more and more and more because we just never have enough poll workers. So I think, you know, if I can use this organization as a recruiting pool, I'm all for it. So yeah, I think that's the best answer I have to that question.
Thanks. And the next question is about the way we choose judges. The current judicial selection process is often opaque and does not give the public many ways to provide input. If you had the power to change Brooklyn's judicial selection process, what's one change that you would make?
Oh, I have more than one. I have a lot to say about this topic. So one thing that happened this past year is in the race for the Supreme Court nominations by the Judicial Committee, some unfortunate information came out about one of the candidates after the district leaders had had their vote, but before the judicial convention took place. And there was no way to separate out that candidate and vote on her independently from the entire slate. And so I think it should be possible at judicial conventions to vote for each judicial candidate individually instead of voting for all of them up and down, because that way we can actually take the time to vet each one and make an informed decision. You know, CBID has a judicial screening committee. We're very experienced at judicial vetting. That's the sort of information I would like to work with and be able to make decisions based upon. The other change would have to do not with Supreme Court, but with seats with elected primaries, so civil court and surrogates court. I think we should have public matching funds. I think right now, the way it is, the best qualification that someone can have who wants to run for judge is inherited wealth or a rich spouse. And because it's just so hard to fundraise, especially because judges have additional fundraising ethics rules. Like they can't actually ask for money themselves. They have to have someone else do it for them. And so I would create public financing to level the playing field and make it possible for a more economically diverse group of judges to be elected.
Thank you. And since it came up earlier, do you have a position on whether judges should be elected at all? Is that a good system, or would it be better to do it a different way?
There's problems either way you do it, right? With appointments, it's so easy to make it a personal kind of slush fund type thing situation. With elections, you struggle with funding and with voters not really having a lot of information. So I think I would err on the side of continuing democracy and having these judicial positions be elected, but reforming the elections process through things like public financing so that it's a little more accessible for candidates and for voters.
Thank you. And then our last question or close to last, is two parts. Since district leaders are also members of the state Democratic Committee, do you support replacing Jay Jacobs as chair of the New York Dems? What do you think the state committee should be doing differently?
I am fully on record as supporting the Replace Jay Jacobs campaign and calling for him to step down. I think, sorry, repeat the second part of the question.
What do you think the state committee should be doing differently?
Oh my God, where to begin?
You have only 3 hours.
Oh, okay. Right. Is this a county committee meeting? We have 3 hours? I'm kidding. I'm sure some of you were chuckling behind your muted. Yeah, no, so the
If this were a county meeting, we would need 12 hours.
you're right. You're right. Okay, so obviously the state party needs to stop going to war against other Democrats. That's the long and short of it. We can't be, fighting against India Walton in the general election for Buffalo mayor and then not having any energy and resources left for, actually competitive congressional races. So that's just a huge embarrassment that that's been allowed to go on as long as it has. And I hope that the people who have the power over this, like the governor, will kind of see the light and allow some new blood and some new energy. I think there's a lot that could be done in terms of building permanent campaign infrastructure, investing in technology, investing in training of staffers, things of that nature that could make the party a real powerhouse. And then there's just simple things like doing mailers and, that type of stuff. But obviously, I think the party should be an organizing tool to empower people and to empower the party.
Thank you. So we went through those questions fairly quickly. So if there's anybody in the Zoom who has another question they would like to ask Diana, you can raise your hand or you can post it in the chat. This is your chance. We're probably not going to do another one of these forums before the June primary.
I can't see how to raise my hands on here, but may I say that I wholly endorse Diana. I think she has shown herself as an excellent leader over many years as president of CBIG in the county organization many years ago. And she's thoughtful and she's technologically very astute. And I think that her heart and her minds are in the right place. And I think that is a good thing to move forward. And Diana, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate that so much.
Marvin, go ahead.
I just think it's worth noting that this is really what grassroots democracy is about, and the gracious transfer of hopefully an important position from one very capable and dedicated woman to another speaks well of our district and gives us hope in the times that we live in.
Thanks, Marvin. Doug, do you have a question?
Would you mind if I just said 1 minute on thanking Lori?
Sure.
Because I think that I did not even realize the full extent of what Lori does until I became a district leader. And the work
Oh, we lost you, Doug, right after you said when you became a district leader. I think you're frozen.
is done for Lori's third sites, organizing poll workers. And am I frozen still?
Okay, now I think maybe try turning off your camera.
Am I still
Sometimes that works.
frozen?
Try turning off your camera and then maybe we'll be able to hear you.
All right, how about now?
Okay, I hear you. Yes.
Okay. I would just want to say that, the 44th Assembly District, I think, runs better than just about any Assembly District when it comes around to elections. And I would like to tell you that it's all my doing and it's all the last 6 years, but that would be a bald-faced lie. Nobody works harder around making sure our election than Lori Nipel. Lori is a OG of the reform movement in many ways. I understand why, and I really appreciate and best in stepping aside, but it is a tremendous loss for the 44th Assembly District. It's a tremendous loss for running smooth elections. And I hope that before she runs off into the sunset, that she imparts all of her secrets that she has held close to her vest to both Diana and I, because we have huge shoes to fill. And so, Lori, this will be, I'm sure, just the first of many opportunities to thank you, and I will do it every chance I get. But thank you. You've been a tremendous partner, and you have earned nothing but our respect and a joyous retirement. Paying district position, and I wish you only the best.
Thank you, Doug. I certainly appreciate it. And it's certainly been wonderful working with you, and we will work together till September. And I must say, at many of the leader meetings, Doug was always armed with legal issues and presented them well. And he was very cogent in what he said. And I thought that was extremely important. And he's worked well with people. And unfortunately, I don't have secrets to reveal. The secret is I like people, I love people, and I'm very concerned about people. And to be in public office and public life, it's not only about reforming and progressing, it's about knowing people in your neighborhood. It's about helping somebody that can't navigate a system, cut through the bureaucracy, get through this. I get calls from 6 a.m. till midnight sometimes. It's about really helping others. And that is the bottom line. And I say that to all of you. If you want progress, you have to help the people around you that need the help when they can't get it. And I've given of my time, and I sacrificed a lot. I have a big $160 pension from New York State for working for the Assembly for 10 years prior to running for district leader and then going to law school. I put that all aside to give 100% of my time to being a district leader. I know nobody will do that, but the bottom line and the secret is know the people around you. When they come for help, help them. I've never charged anyone, whether it's advice on running elections or whether it's somebody getting into kindergarten or somebody getting their mother out of the hospital, released to their home at the last minute, speaking to the director. It's going out of your way for people. And it's not only a district leader that should do it, it's every one of you in this little meeting. Just learn to be open and giving to others as you would expect them to give to you.
Thanks, Lori. So I just wanted to turn it back over to Diana just to give a closing statement. And the one question that we were wrapping into the closing statement was one of our members asked, how long have you lived in the community and what have you contributed throughout the years you've lived here?
Okay, I have lived in the neighborhood since 2011, so that's 13 years now. Yeah, for part of that time, I was actually working as a bartender, but I came back into politics in about 2019, which was, you know, when things had changed a little bit with Me Too and everything, and the political culture has changed a little bit. I am currently on the community board. I chair the Land Use and Landmarks Committee. That keeps me quite busy because of all of the City of Yes proposals we have coming through and the Arrow Linen controversy. I also am involved in this organization in the ADC, and I was its founding treasurer. And then CVID was another organization that I've been a part of for several years and was the president of for 2, and that was an enormously rewarding experience. But it really made me want to continue on and become district leader. So that's the long and short of it. I don't really have any other closing statement to give.
That's fine. Thank you, Diana, for taking the time, and thanks everybody, to all the candidates, for participating in this. Thanks to Amy and Courtney for helping put this together. And
It was mostly Tony. It always is. Thanks, Tony.
That's your big thank you to Tony.
uh, it's interesting I mean, I love talking about this, the inner workings of our local party. As soon as I found out about this stuff, I kind of couldn't get enough of it. So before we conclude tonight, I just want to remind everyone who is a county committee member or an honorary member, to watch for emails about petitioning, because I hope that you'll all decide to run for county committee again this year, and we'll be in touch soon with information about petitioning, and we'll need to recruit more people as well, I think. So if you know somebody who's interested in running for county committee, please send me an email. You can also connect them with Rep Your Block. Nick Kemp, one of our members, is on the call tonight. He's the campaign director of Rep Your Block, and they do great work explaining to people what county committee is, how it all works. So that's a great resource if you know someone who might be interested. So thanks again, and we will talk
Can I
soon.
actually add something?
Yeah, of course.
We're on the topic of, so I just want to let everyone know with petitioning that CBID is going to be creating what's called an omnibus petition, which is where we endorse a whole bunch of candidates and have them all on the petition all the way down. And if you are interested in kind of seeing how we choose those endorsements or possibly getting involved in the endorsement process, we will be doing most of our endorsement at our January meeting and February meeting. And so I know in January, we're probably going to do the countywide civil court seat, Congress, state Senate, state assembly. And then in February, we'll do the civil court races, which we have 4 open seats this year for district civil court races. So, you're more than welcome to come by the club and see what we're up to. I think this January meeting is going to be on Zoom.
Yes, it is. It's going to be on Zoom, and sorry to just jump in this way, but it's going to be on Zoom. And if you would like to attend, go on the CBID website, cbidems.org, and there will be a place for you to register. To get
Yeah, that's not actually set up yet.
No, not yet, but it will be soon.
It will, yes.
What's the date? Or is there a date yet?
Yes.
No, it's January. Hold on, get my calendar open.
I'll say the 25th.
It's yes, January 25th.
Is it also possible for people to join CBID?
Oh, yes, very much so.
I wasn't clear.
And it's dirt cheap. It's only $25 a year. Unless you're a senior, then it's even cheaper.
Or a student.
Or a student.
All right,
You
well, thanks.
are all welcome.
Yes, and Ben just put in the chat, not in time to vote on endorsements this year if you just
No.
joined today. But
No, but you can,
Yeah,
but you can observe the process.
You can ask candidates questions and things like that. You can actively participate.
yes, no, I
You're good
enjoyed.
potato chips.
All right, I
You're
enjoyed
good
the last
potato chips at meetings.
Yes.
potato chips.
Potato
yes.
chips.
All right, that's a ringing endorsement for CBID. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and be well. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.